Okay, well, I get the pleasure to introduce Marilyn. Um, Marilyn, for those of you that don't know, is a native Youper, born and raised up here in Chassell. She graduated from Michigan Tech with degrees in math and business. Her degrees have brought her all over the country and even over to the UK for a stint over there in the corporate world. She eventually turned and returned to the UP. And in the fall of 2011, became the CEO, started as interim and moved on to full-time CEO of MTEC SmartZone, Michigan Tech Enterprise Corporation, up here in Houghton. And she was there until 2018 when she retired. She hired myself at MTEC and Jason Mack over what that is joining us today as part of the team with her. So we had the privilege of working with Marilyn and watched the SmartZone, our MTEC SmartZone grow significantly, especially in the areas of our programming. Marilyn is a whiz at that, so please pepper her with questions. She is a great resource. She currently lives in Ann Arbor after retirement, and I will just turn it right over to her because she's still full of energy and tons of experience that I know she will share with us today. So please help me welcome Marilyn to our annual meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, as Cheryl said, I have a lot of experience. I worked in a Fortune 500 company. I worked in a startup. I taught at the university level. So all those kinds of experiences really helped with working in an incubator system. And I have international experience. And, you know, there was I don't go on Facebook very much, but there was a poll when I went on to look at somebody's post on when did you start working? Well, I got my first quarter picking strawberries at age 6, and I haven't stopped, okay? So this presentation is a little bit about a person who was really unsure whether retirement was for me. I loved my job. I've always loved working. I like the sense of accomplishment. So if you're in the same boat, I'm going to share some tips on how I made the transition. Okay, whoops. So the first tip is to understand how to age well. When you retire, we're really young old. We still have a lot of energy. Ken and I are riding horses on the beach in Chile in the picture on the left. You know, we have an opportunity to have those adventures, and, you know, hopefully we've been planning well from a financial perspective that you can have those adventures. On the right is the 90th birthday party for Ken's Uncle John. Okay, so he's 90 going on 50, right? And that's exactly how we want to make sure we work, right? You want to make sure we're going into old, that you're still physically able and you're functioning, etc. So that's the first tip. Make sure that we take care of ourselves to be able to enjoy our retirement. You know, they say we have to retire because our bodies need so much more maintenance. And, you know, I hate to tell you, it's true. My husband is a diabetic, and when we moved down here, he says, I think my job is going to doctors. He looked up how many professionals he's been seeing, and since we've been here for 2 years, he's seen 25, okay? You know, counting the nurses, etc. But for us, exercise is important. They're finding it's the elixir of life. It helps avoid dementia and heart disease and cancer and you name it. So exercise is really important. And I was just reading where the reason people talk about walking is because the heart pumps the blood down, but you need those muscles in your legs to pump the veins, for the veins to pump the blood up. So exercise, this is something that we need to start as a habit before it happens. Diet, of course, is important. Sleep. I found when I first retired that, oh, it's after lunch. I think I'll take a little nap because I have time to do it and I love to nap. Well, then I'd be waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then by next afternoon, I need a nap again. So I really had to work on my sleep hygiene. You know, it's just like those babies. You have to put them to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time, etc. Keeping yourself mentally able. And I can't see what I did here. Whoops. But you know what? I have also found that you really have to pay attention to your behavioral health as well, how you feel mentally and spiritually. And this is this is one of the models in terms of looking at a cognitive triangle, because sometimes your thoughts accelerate your feelings, which accelerate your behavior. So for me, who's a pretty active person, who likes to be around people, I'd say I'm a recovering Finn. Finnish people are very shy and introverted. So, but I have a lot of need to be around people. If I have a day where I don't have anything planned, or a conversation on Zoom or with my family, I become bored and depressed. And you know what? It just puts me into the fact I don't want to do anything. So you really have to pay attention to your mental health as well. You know, thinking about how you move forward, etc. So it's just something to pay attention to. Almost everybody I know who's retired misses, number one, the people, and number two, the structure. And you have to figure out how to put that structure back in your day in some way or another. So usually I plan to use the pool right when I get up in the morning. I fall out of bed into my swimming suit and I'm at the pool in 7 minutes. And that's what starts my day. So you have to create that structure in order not to fall into this bit of a dilemma. Tip number 2, find retirement gurus. This is probably one of the most important things I did before I retired, okay? I looked around to see who retired in a way that I admired, and I went to visit them. And I don't mean a phone call. I mean, I went to visit them, okay? And you will be surprised how much you learn from this experience. This is Phil Musser. He used to be the chair of our board, and he retired to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So there's several things I learned visiting Phil. Number one, Phil is so liberal that Ann Arbor wouldn't fit. He wouldn't fit in Ann Arbor. But Santa Fe is a liberal community, and he's also an environmentalist. So some of his hobbies include cactus rescue. So when they're building a new housing development, he takes these cactuses and he moves them so they will thrive rather than die. He took up a new hobby, which is rattlesnake rescue. He goes to Indian powwows. I remember he talked about retirement, and he says, you know, I went to this event and I saw this gentleman. He said, I want to be friends with him. And so he made the effort to create a friendship and relationship. So I learned that you need to be in a community that matches your personality. Okay, and that you can move to a new community and create a new life around it, but you do have to put in effort. One of the other people I visited, I met her. She ran Procter & Gamble Asia. She had 6,000 employees. Okay, and when she retired to Sheboygan, Michigan, which is a kind of a small town. Her husband runs the Butterfly Museum in Mackinac Island. And so I went to visit her. She was running an event, and her event was to raise money for a charity, and it was a health and fitness session. And we went to one session, and after, when we saw the yoga instructor outside for a cigarette, I also decided that being in a college town created a kind of atmosphere that maybe some parts of rural America don't have. And that taught me something as well in terms of what I saw other people do that would work for you, etc. I would highly recommend that you look around and visit some of your retirement gurus to see what works for you. It'll surprise you what you learn. Okay. Tip number 3, just say no. When you retire, you're going to be asked, will you be on this board? Will you help me organize this? Will you, we have a position for XYZ. And I think if you talk to many people, they will say they're busier in retirement than they've ever been. Sometimes it's on things that aren't meaningful for them. So I was really strategic about saying no. And I only said yes to one thing, and that was to Finlandia University, because from my values, the things that are part of my purpose is education and economic development. And in the Keweenaw, the two are inextricably intertwined. From the education system, training the workforce of the future, et cetera. And it also, because education is going through such a rapid change right now, education is going to look different after COVID. People have learned how to go online, et cetera. And many institutions haven't really grasped what that means for them, both in terms of enrollment and in terms of what people have to offer. So this, yes, actually gave me an opportunity to take several webinars about being a trustee at a university level to learn what are some of the key issues facing higher education and be part of a strategic plan that helps move them forward. Now, I'm one person on the board, and I have also found that there's a lot of organizations that really need business thinking in terms of moving forward. Anyway, I'm just saying that if you are able to pick the right yes, it helps you be fully engaged rather than only giving part of yourself and having an impact where you may not have otherwise. So tip number 3 is just say no. Be very particular about what you want to get involved in. Tip number 4, create and execute a bucket list. Okay, so these 2 pictures are 4 of us executed walking 100 miles of the Camino in Spain in 2019. Okay, the Camino is a religious walk. People do it for a number of reasons. And it can take many routes. The original route is 458 miles from the north of France through the north of Spain into Santiago. We actually went from the southern tip of France right by Portugal along the Atlantic Ocean up. But I had read about this trek in my when I was 30 in the National Geographic, and I totally wanted to do it. Well, life gets in the way. You have kids, right, Carmen? And who has time to take, X number of days in order to go and walk the Appalachian Trail, which was also on my list, which I don't think is going to happen. But anyway, to do that. So a friend of mine I met, she had just done her second, and it kind of propelled us to do that. And, I think it's a time for really making sure that you plan some of this stuff before your next phase of life gets in the way. Okay, there's many more things that that I want to do, and then the next one, tip number 5, do the things you always wanted to do but didn't have time. Okay, so I said I had international experience, and one of the things that I really learned from that was, that was on my list to work overseas forever. And when I was at Cummins, we always had a performance plan, and you indicated what your goals are. And my goal, I always had international experience on that. And by the time I'm 50, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's never going to happen. But it did. And I am going to tell you, it made such a difference in the way I thought about myself. Okay. I'm just saying that I felt more confident. I felt like I could do anything. And it is it is really important. So search back in your memory. What did you want to do in high school that you never ended up doing? What did you want to do in your early 20s that you never had a chance to do? So one of the things I've listed here is a little company called Mood Lifters. It's actually a startup company in Ann Arbor, and I started working with them to help work on the business. Now, she's an academic. Not only that, she's a liberal arts academic, and business is a little bit evil, like making money is kind of evil. So working on the business didn't really, she wasn't quite ready for advice yet. However, I got interested in the product. Her product is working on the tools that help anxiety and depression in a model that is like Weight Watchers. So it's not a psychologist led, it's a workshop looking at the tools that would help you thrive. And I always, when I was in high school, I thought I wanted to be a psychiatrist. So because I'm not a very caring person and I'm not very patient, this is perfect because it's more teaching than it is coaching, etc. I've always wanted to play bridge. I was playing bridge with the best player in Michigan before COVID. And I helped my sister run a campaign to run for the state house. So, you know, it gives you an opportunity to do some of the things that you always wanted to do, but didn't have time. And that's why you have to say no to all those things that other people want you to do, so you can focus on what's really important to you. Okay, tip number 6, do it now. So when I was working, Ken's extended family had a timeshare in Aruba, and all his cousins were going to go to Aruba in March. But somehow there was some state meeting, I'm not sure what, that was on the calendar the same week. And I said, no, you know, I've got this meeting. No, I am really sorry. I said no to that. Okay. So right before COVID, my sister's son, he lives in Hawaii, and she wanted to go to Hawaii. And I'm like, oh my gosh, just what we want to do, spend all our money the first year of retirement. But we said yes. And we spent a week on Oahu and a week on Hawaii. And not only was it an opportunity to bond with my sister, but to reacquaint ourselves with her son, our nephew, but also have a fabulous week. And when we got back, the state closed down. Okay, so the issue is don't wait, do it now. You, especially as a young old person, you know, who knows what life is going to bring, and you know, sometimes you have to do it now. So at MTEC, we had a consultant who, when he retired, he started a distillery in Leelanau Township, Ironfish, and Mackinac Island is featuring his distilled whiskeys in a special dinner next Saturday night. Well, it happens to be our 43rd anniversary, so guess what? We're going to do it now. We're going to go and celebrate with Richard and spend our stimulus check. Okay, move before you have to. This is a tip from my mother. This is our house in Hancock, March 1st of 2019. That was you had a great winter this year, but that winter there was over 300 inches of snow. And we had already decided that we were going to move to Ann Arbor. And we put the house on the market. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, who's going to buy this house right now? But hey, it was gone in 3 weeks. So, but my mother felt really strongly that you need to do things before you can't do them. One of the things I learned about moving, we'd been in that house for 15 years. You would not believe how much stuff you accumulate in 15 years. Many of you have probably been in your house more than 15 years, and it is a job to go through that. So you need to, I found that it took a lot of energy. Everything you touch was a decision. Do I love it enough that I want to take it? Do I give it away? Do I sell it? Do I throw it away? So tip number 7 is move before you need to. We just came back from Florida, and our good friend's their mother is now 84, and she lives in this beautiful apartment. And the apartment is probably 1,200 square feet, maybe more. But she's getting to the point where she can't quite manage everything. She can't reach in the cupboard, etc. And I'm thinking, you know what, my mother would have moved. And that is also a gift you give to your children. It's a gift you give to your children to be able to plan ahead so they aren't pushing you to do something that you need but aren't willing to accept. So tip number 7, move before you need to. I'm going to tell you, Ken was over shoveling snow after this winter, so that winter. So I was happy that we moved. Tip number 8, refine your social network. So if you look at your friends and family and extended network, you should have these 6 things in your support network. The first thing is emotional support. You know, we all have ups and downs in our life, and having that friend or family member or colleague to be able to share your joys and your sorrows is really important. There's people you need guidance. Hey, how do we do that? That's why you have an organization like the Michigan Business Incubator Association, and you will find that this virtual support group that the MBIA is putting together is going to be just that. It's going to be guidance for you because there are people in your same state of life, but you need it as a retirement as well. The next one is feedback, and I think this one is the hardest. I'm going to tell you a story. My niece, Courtney, is very bright. She works for Shell Oil Company, and she is a punner. She loves puns, right? And most of her network or people at work, colleagues, don't quite get them. You know, they say he who laughs last didn't get the joke, right? Well, lots of them don't get the joke. But Courtney recently got promoted twice, and she says, oh my gosh, I must be getting funnier because people are laughing. Well, guess what? She's not getting funnier. The issue is people aren't giving her feedback because now she has a different role. So I found I found that often you need to find somebody who's going to give you feedback. And the reason this picture is on the left is that you need people who are going to call you on your stuff, right? We all have stuff. We all have blind sides. We all have things that we don't notice, etc. And it's important to have people who are that for you. I hate to tell you, part of my feedback system is my kids. They call me out all the time. So, but you need to have that. You think of your social network as fun and play. That's usually what you're putting in, but you also need to be thinking about material support. As I said, we recently went to Florida, and my daughter had a problem with her credit card, and she was at the airport and her credit card wouldn't work. So she needed somebody with material support to be able to get her through to get to the next vacation, right? And hey, if you're a mom, that's you. If you're a dad, that's you. But as you age, you also need that. People who you can count on, your brother-in-law, etc. And then the last one is behavioral assistance. So again, the same vacation, my son and daughter-in-law are in New York City. Layla goes out to find the van and it's not there. She goes, oh, maybe I parked it on the next block. Nope, it's not there. I'm sure I parked it right there. It had been towed. They were on the way to the airport, okay? And so from a behavioral assistance perspective, you need to find somebody who you can count on that will help you out of a jam, whether it is getting your car out of jail. So she called her brother who did that for her, or it's a ride to the supermarket when you get older. So I met a woman in my neighborhood who is retired, and she asked me to sub in one of her bridge games, and it's a group of friends that have been together for quite some time. They're all retired, they're all widows. And at the end of the play, they were saying, oh, you know, Evelyn, who's going to drive Evelyn to her doctor's appointment? Did we put a schedule for that together? So they have created their chosen family. None of them have family in town, but they're their chosen family for each other. Okay. So it is really important to think about who are the people in your life, and especially as you get older, and none of us like to ask for help. None of us do. We think we're independent, etc. That's a lie. We all have our needs for moving forward, and evaluating your network is really important. One last story. I have a really good friend who retired a little bit earlier than I did, and she said, you know, Marilyn, I went through a real depression a year ago, December, just really a depression. And she has found that this is her problem. She has outgrown many of her friends, okay? I think that is pretty easy as you get life experience. There are people that have grown in a different direction, or maybe not grown at all, and that you don't have any contact with. So she ended up joining the Unitarian Church, and that led her to a bunch of relationships to do another event, etc. And I mean, she's happy as a clam again. So again, sometimes we have to really evaluate where we are with our network and see if it's working for us, and continue to make that happen. Okay, tip number 9, mission and purpose. So unfortunately, my husband and I went to a funeral 2 weeks ago. It was my sister's mother-in-law who had a stroke and died at 90. And they thought she was going to live maybe a week, and it was 10 weeks. And the 3 days before the funeral, she became very lucid, and she stood up and she said, okay, I want the funeral in this church. I want these hymns. I want the wake at Linda's house. You better have beer and alcohol and serve ribs. Okay. And so of course the funeral was really nice. The write-up was also really nice because it focused on her life as having 2 passions, which were her church and her family. She had 6 kids. She had, you know, I think she had 20 grandchildren, something like that. And it was really clear what she was about. She was about her church and her family. That was it. So at the wake, I met one of her sons-in-law, and he said, oh yeah, I retired about 6 years ago when I was 62. So I'm calculating how old he is. He said, I'm trying to figure out what my purpose is. So I think that it's really easy to make it more complicated than it is. You need to know what's important and then set boundaries. We all have skills and abilities, and you just have to figure what makes you happy. How can you succeed? They say that life is in 3/3. The first third is learning, the second third is earning, and the last third is returning. So this is an opportunity to figure out what is important in your returning years, okay? And you do it in a number of ways. You do it with your financials, you do it with your volunteering, you do it with your activities, but you also do it by modeling healthy behavior, whatever that is, okay? Solving problems, being a person of character. So that picture is my son and our first grandbaby. So we're a family of late bloomers. I'm 70 years old and we just got our first grandbaby. So hey, I have to live till 90 to see him graduate from high school. But the issue is knowing what's important and setting boundaries and creating time for that. When my kids were little, I felt I wanted them to know their cousins. And so we made sure that every summer we were spending time at their grandmother's farm and they played with their cousins. So again, your mission and purpose is as simple as life is about joy, figuring out what's important, and then setting boundaries so you don't get distracted from that asset. Okay, and the last thing is be prepared to pivot, just like an entrepreneur. It's nothing different than that. All of you have gone through life and things didn't work out the way you thought, right? That first boyfriend in high school may not have worked out. The first job was a learning experience, but hey, you know what? It was a bouncing board to something else. Well, that happens in retirement too. And, you know, this year has been a pivot for me because of COVID. You know, I canceled 3 vacations and a bridge tournament and, you know, et cetera. So God laughs at our plans. That being said, when I was starting to think about my bucket list, I had some things on it that I could do during COVID. Okay. And one of them is I had thought I wanted to get another degree in psychology or, hey, Shakespeare, I don't know. But I haven't really moved forward with that, but I have been taking some of these massive online courses. So I've taken a course in nutrition, I've taken a course in Judaism because my son converted, you know, just things that were interesting. And it gave me a structure to work from during the day. My daughter got a puppy, and unfortunately, that's part of my project too. All right, walking the dog, making sure that she is well behaved in company. And then the last thing that kept me sane actually was a social networking group called Lunch Club. A friend of mine here in Ann Arbor introduced me. It's a invitation only organization, and it was a meet in person type of networking, and there's one in Detroit. But with COVID, they went virtual, and basically it's based on a dating algorithm. So you look at your interests and, you know, are you interested in projects? Are you interested in business development? Are you interested in meeting venture capitalists? Are you interested in other entrepreneurs? Are you interested in meeting interesting people? That's what I was interested in. And I have met people from Israel and Canada, from Boston, a woman who works for Bloomberg's MBA program for mayors. I've other life coaches, people in behavioral science, and it's a chance for me to have an intellectual conversation and meet people who are new and interesting. So, but part of the point was that life is going to not go to plan. You know, there's going to be an illness. Your daughter, I have 2 friends who are now raising their grandchildren. You know, you have this dream home you want to build with your spouse, and, you know, there's a mobility issue and your spouse can't do it. So there will be times where things just don't work out. And having some of those activities in reserve when you think about being old, is an opportunity for you to have something in place when you have to pivot. Okay. So I don't know if I took 45 minutes or whatever you asked me to do, but for a person who is my father's child, and my father's mantra was, retire, I'm going to expire first. This has been a interesting journey, and one that I have actually found real pleasure in. You sleep better. You have, I mean, I can take all day to do the laundry. What is that about? You know, you're not rushing from place to place. And, you know, this last third is a time to really focus on what's important and make sure that at the end, when my children write their little paragraph about what was mom about, hopefully they'll only say the good things, right? And talk about some of the things that you were able to do. Okay. So I'll just open it up, and hopefully, you know, some of those things you can start doing now. Really, I'm serious. Start looking for retirement heroes, because they will teach you things you didn't even know to ask. Okay, if you remember one thing. Any questions?